Hello everyone, Sharsat Ganei here, and today I'm joined by MP for Turnhill and the Deputy Leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, MP Meliesa Lenttsman. It's a pleasure to have you on our program.
Thank you for having me.
You have been involved and supporting Iranian community since the start of the protest last year in September 2022. It feels like you feel very close to Iranian community. Can I ask the reasons behind it?
Well, I've been close to the Iranian community well before I was elected, and there is the right side of history in Canada and there's the wrong side of history in Canada. And I think if we don't support human rights, democracy, freedom, the rule of law, then we end up on the wrong side of history, and that's not ever where I want to be. So the Iranian community is pushing for their own rights, for their own freedoms, and we believe that that's something that should be enjoyed at home and something that should be enjoyed in a future free Iran.
Can we know a little bit more about your story of your parents coming to Canada? I think you came from, your parents came from Russia.
My parents came from the former Soviet Union in the mid-'70s, and it's a big reason why, why the belief system that I hold dear is the same, is almost the same one as the Iranian community who fled 43 years ago or 44 years ago now, freeing oppression, freeing a place where there was no ownership and no freedom of religion and no freedom of conscience and no freedom of speech, and they came to Canada my father was an uncredentialed engineer who drove a taxi to put his mom through school to give his kids a better life, and I think that that's the story of so many in this neighborhood and so many Canadians right across the board. So I'm very lucky. I won the birth lottery being born here after my parents chose to make Canada their home.
So can we say that your parents left communism, or were they under persecution?
My parents absolutely left communism. They left a place where they couldn't own anything. They couldn't believe what they wanted to believe. They couldn't say what they wanted to say. And freedom in Canada represented a brand new life where their kids would do better than them, and the next generation would do better than anything they ever had before. And we're so grateful that this country welcomed them.
Yeah, I think Iranian people also feel very close to that. I can understand this. I remember back in, I think maybe it was in September or October last year, you were saying in Parliament that not putting IRGC on the terrorist list has consequences for Canada. What consequences do you think it will have?
Well, I still say that in Parliament, and I will continue to say that every single day until either this government lists the terrorists and bans them from Canada, or that we create a new government who has promised and will do just that. Look, these are a group of individuals who live here and intimidate a population. They are free to organize, they are free to raise money, they are free to engage in terror right on Canadian soil. So I think that's an issue for every single Canadian, and it's certainly an issue for the Iranian Canadian community that, in some cases calls me from their car with a blurred out background away from their homes because they are terrified that regime actors, that bad actors are listening and going to intimidate their families, or even worse, going to intimidate those families at home for protesting the very real freedom that they are doing every day in the streets.
Mm-hmm. So you believe that there are Iranians like Islamic Republic or people associated with Islamic Republic who are in Canada and who are supporting Islamic Republic in Canada?
We don't believe that. We know that. We know that there's instances after the death of Zahra Kazemi. There was, the chief of police from Tehran working out in a Good Life Fitness, probably less than 10 kilometers from here. Mm-hmm. That it is unacceptable that Canada is a safe haven for the terrorists that terrorize a population both in Iran, who destabilize the region as a whole, and furthermore terrorize the people right in this country. We know that family members of the regime are here in school, they are here working, they are here living and enjoying the fruits of the freedom of Canada that my parents and probably your parents came here to respect, to work hard in, and to follow the law. They don't do that, and there should be consequences.
What do you think should be done to these people? How can we identify them?
Look, in the cases where there are already citizens, that becomes more difficult. But it's a question of political will. Anybody who is engaged in terrorist activity or sympathizing with terrorist activity or doing anything to move forward the terrorist activity that we know that they have or will be engaged in, then it takes the full extent of the law to make sure that they cannot do that here. With anybody who hasn't attained citizenship, with those who are permanent residents, we should ban anybody who has ties to the IRGC. And we're not talking about somebody who was conscripted at 18 years old to serve. We are talking about people who have made a life of service in an organization engaged in terror. That should never be allowed in Canada. And I think it's a question of political will and resources and investigative powers that we already have under the law.
How do you think we can block the money that is coming from Islamic Republic into Canada for supporting IRGC associated people?
So I think first and foremost, we've got to block any additional actors coming in, anybody with ties to the IRGC, anybody who's directly engaged in it. And I think that in itself will stop the money flow, because when you pass a law like that, you can't, there are certain things you can do under Canadian law and there are certain things you can't. Banning the IRGC is one way of doing it, but we have the investigative powers under our law for things like money laundering, for things like funding activities that should not be allowed here. And I think again, it's a question of political will and giving the powers to our agencies like the RCMP to actually carry out these investigations and to make sure that there are, Canadians know that there are consequences to doing bad things in Canada. And I don't think we have that when it comes to this issue and frankly, many others.
Mm-hmm. I think around 2 months ago, you had a meeting with Prince Reza Pahlavi. Can we know more about what was the discussion, if it's not confidential?
Of course. Look, I think... There is, I'm not an Iranian Canadian. That's very clear to many in the community. I am not somebody who has ever lived in Iran. I am not somebody who has ever lived under the oppression of the mullahs in Iran. So I know the future of Iran belongs to the Iranian people, and they'll make the decisions about how they go. But our job is to understand what is happening, what the future of Iran, what a future of a free and democratic Iran could look like. And as a result, we've met with many, many groups who have a vision for a future of Iran that is safe, for a future of Iran that is safe for Canadians who for those who will want to become Canadians, and for a future of Iran that is safe in the region as a partner that we can once again have. Because right now, we don't have a partner in the mullahs of Iran. We never will until there is a free Iran. So we listen to the vision of the Crown Prince and what he sees as the future of Iran. And I thought that was a very important conversation.
And what do you think about his trip to Israel? Because I know you're Jewish and your family are as well. So what do you think about this trip?
Look, I think that naturally there is an alliance between those who want freedom and democracy and safety in a region. I was very pleased to see somebody of that stature engaging with the government of Israel. I think it'll ease some of the tensions of recent past in the region. And I was very happy to see a lot of the Iranian, a lot of the Persian community here, just this long weekend, walking alongside the community in a march of 20,000 for standing up for Israel. I think we have a natural relationship with each other, and I'm happy to see that grow.
Yeah, it was yesterday, right?
It was yesterday.
Yeah, Iranian holding the flags.
That's right. That's right. It was nice to see. It was nice to see those flags amongst a sea of other flags and communities, particularly in a neighborhood like this, working together. Communities that maybe don't know each other, and communities that want to see a brighter future again of freedom, of democracy, of the rule of law, and of what's right. I'm absolutely just blown away by the Iranian Canadians community's commitment to a future, to a free Iran in a way that I don't ever remember seeing. And I grew up, alongside an Iranian community with many, many Persian friends who always knew that the day would come. And it certainly feels closer to that day. And I know that you will keep going. I know that you will keep going in every diaspora community, and I will be there with you every step of the way. So one day we can visit together a free and democratic Iran.
Some Iranian people are saying that probably Canada stands to Islamic Republic. It might not be as important because right now there is no embassy of here in Canada from Iran, and also there are not a very strong political relation with Iran. What do you think about this? Do you think this is valid?
No, I think, look, Canada always has to act in the best interest of Canada, and we do so in the best interest of Canadians. And what it means to have consequences for regimes that openly operate, openly fundraise, openly organized terror networks on our soil, that has to be important. And it's important for everybody who lives here, everybody who enjoys the safety of Canada, who enjoys the fruits of this country, who works hard to get ahead. Canada always has to have a stand, and it's incredible to me that a country engaged in over 550 executions in the last 6 months, over in the realm of more than 5 just this weekend, that we would sit on a Human Rights Council with them at international forum. Canada makes a stand. Canada does what's right. And in this case, we are not doing that.
It's, I think, around 7-8 months since the start of the protests. Is there a certain thing that we could have done, or the government of Canada could have done, and it's not being accomplished, or it's not being followed up, or it's not, we didn't have very strong stance on it?
Most certainly. The Canadian government has said that it is, that is sanctioned 10,000 individuals, but they don't even have 10,000 names. They don't know who they're sanctioning. What the government of Canada could have done was had the political courage and the political will to list this organization as terrorists and start the investigations into the money, the threats, the intimidation coming from the regime right here on our own soil. And it's not just Iran. We're seeing an incursion into our democracy from players all over the world. And Canada cannot be a safe place to do what you want when you want it. We have rules here, and those rules should be enforced by the government of Canada.
Talking about the threat from maybe other countries and from all over the world, let's say about China, because China, like Communist China, Chinese Communist Party and Islamic Republic, they have very close relations. And we know that there are some sorts of infiltrations in Canada as well, like the police stations that we discovered. And it's not just in Canada, it's also, they've been discovered in US, in Europe. So how can we make sure that Canada, Communist China, is not contributing to the suppressions of Iranians or affecting Iranian here in Canada?
Well, one, you mentioned it yourself, to have police stations on Canadian soil operating to intimidate Canadian citizens. It's unbelievable. It's absurd, and you wouldn't stand for it in any other country. We've called for a number of things. So one of those things is a foreign agent registry. You have to register to lobby if you are a charity, if you are a food bank, if you are a program that does after-school activities for kids. You have to register in order to talk to the government. But if you are a foreign actor, there is no registry here. We don't know what you're doing. We know who is here and how many, but we don't know anything about you. So first and foremost, we've seen the government stall on a foreign agent registry for years now. So we've been calling for that. And of course, a full public inquiry every single day in the newspapers. There are leaks of additional facts that become known, or additional claims that we don't know that are true or not true. We've had a member of Parliament's family, in the case of my colleague Michael Chong's family threatened in Hong Kong for a vote that he cast on the floor of the House of Commons. That is the most significant breach of privilege of somebody being able to do their job and say what they want to say on the floor of the House of Commons with a vote. That has changed the conversation about this, because that is an actual incursion into our democracy, and it is a threat against an individual who enjoys the protection of the parliamentary precinct every day. Now imagine what is happening to other Canadians who don't enjoy that privilege and who don't have that protection. It is happening every single day. So we want a national public inquiry, and we want it now. And we're going to hear whether the former Governor General, David Johnston, today will call for that. But we've been clear, other parties have been clear that we want to see an inquiry. So we are certainly hopeful that the right decision is made and that we can get to the bottom of what's happening in this country.
And I think he was saying that he was talking about this threat since 2019, but looks like he was not being heard.
Look, I think there are a number of things that the government did and did not do, but we want to know who knew, when they knew, what they knew, and the only way to get to that is through a public inquiry. We know that the government has known about this. We know that they were briefed about it, and every day that a new story comes out, the government says that maybe it's not true, the facts are not correct. I think Canadians have had enough of the stonewalling from the Liberal government on this, and we want to know exactly what was known, when it was known, who knew it, and what they did about it.
Okay. And regarding the election and China's interference, or CCP's interference to the election in Canada, have we seen similar things about Islamic Republic?
Well, look, I think understanding this from an inquiry's perspective, we know that this is happening. We don't believe that it has changed the outcome of an election, but it certainly most likely has changed the outcome of a number of members of Parliament that could have been elected or that weren't elected. We just don't know to what extent. We know it's been happening. We don't know who knew about it. We don't know what they did about it. We don't know if anybody did anything at all about it. And that's exactly what we want to know. In order to be able to act and stop this from happening in the next election, we need to know all of these things. And without the information, without being armed with the information, it will happen again.
Thank you, MP Meliesa Lentesman.